We are very honored to have 4 experts from NILE, CSF, DSO, FWC to share their presentation today. I will introduce each of them in their speech session. Now, the first one, we will have the expert from NILE, the National Institute of Electronics and Information Technology, India, to share. NILE is an autonomous body under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. We have the Mr. Subhanshu Tiwari, Executive Director, NILE, Chandigarh. He's an IT and a telecom professional with over 28 years of experience. He has been associated with many multinational corporations like Ericsson, Nokia, HCL, HP, and HC-Dot. So let's welcome Mr. Tiwari.
So, we'll start with the introduction of the organization. I understand not everybody is familiar with the organization. As Dr. Dennis, you already mentioned, we are an autonomous scientific society within Ministry of IT and Electronics. And our prime mandate is skill development in the field of IT and electronics. But we are very well engaged in other areas of R&D and consulting services also. We are offering data digitization services. We are also providing recruitment support to the government organizations and various other organizations because of a mature and experienced team of handling examination system. We have a large delivery network pan-India. I will go to the other slide. If you can see, we have a wide presence geographically across India. And if you see the northeast part of the India, we have a major presence, largely because this is an area with difficult terrain. And the interest of the government is that in such kind of geographical locations where other opportunities are less for the residents over there, organizations like government organizations like NILE should play a big role. So that explains why we have a huge presence in one part of the country here in the Northeast. And then also we are distributed across all over India. We are having our own centers, around 47 centers pan-India. And then we are working with multiple partners all over India to ensure that whatever programs we are offering, they are reaching to the remotest part of the country. That's how we are operating currently. Now, these are some of the category of the programs that we are offering. We are offering some formal programs like degree and diploma programs, post-graduation programs, wherein these formal degrees are awarded like BTech, MTech, what we call here in India. Many places it is known as Bachelor of Science. Other places it is known as Bachelor of Science, Master of Science. Here in India, mostly it is known by the name of BTech and MTech. And then these other graduation programs. Then we have some long-term skill courses, which are primarily greater than 500-hour program. So these programs we are having, and multiple kind of domains are covered in this bucket. Similar programs we also have for short-term period also, which primarily lies in the range of 200 to 500 hours. And these we call as short-term skilling courses. And then we have some digital competency courses. This is mainly meant for the beginners. We want them to be digitally literate. And these kind of programs are also offered all over India to different segment of the population, be it farmers, be it school-going students, be it businessmen, and various category of the people who are generally not familiar with the usage of computer and other applications. For them, we have this kind of program. So as I mentioned, we have specialized programs as in the different categories for students, working professionals, government employees, scholars, and it is meant for public as well as private sector organizations. By virtue of our presence and the global reach across all over India, in the last 10 years, through our 47 centers, supported by another 5,000 centers which are in different ways working with us, we have been able to train around 8.4 millions of the candidates all over India in the last 10 years. And now, we are working towards doubling this target because the need of digital manpower has increased multifold over a period of in the last few years. So we are revising our targets and will possibly be kind of doing more than what we are doing today, almost double of what we are doing today. We have a very matured infrastructure currently, and through which we are offering our different programs. A lot of them are now also operating in virtual mode. Virtual Training Academy is one of the platforms that is heavily being used to connect to the students and participants, where availability of trainers cannot be ensured at short notice. So these kind of virtual academy, virtual platforms are being used. Now we have also come up with a virtual lab here in one of our centers, where we are offering students and the participants and the professionals different kind of basically hardware infrastructure, IoT kits and other kind of infrastructure wherein they can access remotely from their colleges. They can log into these hardware infrastructure. They can basically run their programs, they can fuse their programs and then see how it behaves in the virtual environment. They can get a feel of their changes, whatever they are doing in the program. So this has come up recently and has been launched and is getting very much traction among the participants. Now coming to the emerging areas, we all understand that all these are emerging areas like artificial intelligence, robotics, IoT, big data analytics, cloud computing. There is a huge demand, and we know that in the coming days, there will be a scarcity of resources in these areas, and that's why we are heavily focused in increasing our strength of trainers. And also increasing our course contents for these domains, so that we have offering for every segment of the people whosoever is interested in getting experience in these domains. We are working with colleges, schools, organizations, some commercial organizations, government organizations to impart different kind of programs. And we are modifying our programs and course contents according to the need of the organization. So that's basically tailor-made content also we are offering. And the purpose is that basically whatever the need of the organization is, we should be in a position to address it in a timely manner. Now NILET sees itself as a bridge between academic institutions and industries. That's how we visualize us, and that's how actually the senior government officials and the government bodies also want us to act. We see that we carry the knowledge of the academic institutions, we see the needs of the industry, and then try to create a content and the delivery model so that the needs of the industries are met by what we are offering. And the R&D work that academic institutions are offering, that gets aligned with the industry need. And those kind of contents we prepare ourselves and then impart training in those areas with a lot of hands-on exposure opportunities as well. So the students get to work on some of the industrial projects while working and getting training from our organization. And they are industry ready. Once they complete their courses, they can quickly gain some kind of employment in the industry if they are interested. They can also start their own, small setup if they are interested in developing as an entrepreneur. We are having international collaboration and recognition, and we have been working in this area. Currently, we are having MOU with the Information Technology Promotion Agency, Japan, and which was basically signed long back, which recognizes some of the standard courses of NILET A, B, and C level. And those get acknowledgement there by the industry. Similarly, we have MOU with NICC and SCS Singapore. NICC is National Information Computer Center Singapore and Singapore Computer Society. So through this MOU also, NILET's B and C level course is being recognized as equivalent to Associate Certified IT Project Manager. We have MOU with Korean Skill Foundation also. We'll discuss more on this. So these are some of the understandings and MOUs which we have with different organizations with Korea. The initial one was signed between NILET and Taipei Computer Association in 2011. For some of the for following activities, this is like Taiwan India Corporation of ICT Human Resource and Mutual Recognition of IT Certification. So this was targeted for these two main things. Then we had another agreement with the Computer Skill Foundation for mutual recognition of our courses and basically to enable mobility of the IT resources. Then we also had a training program, and for a period of this is a long-term MOU which we have signed in 2019 with Institute for Information Technology in Taiwan. And recently we organized an international conference on digital technology where Dr. Dennis Hu was also there, and he might have seen what kind of activities we were involved in that forum, and that provided a good platform to share our experience in the digital skilling domain. This is one of the success story which we see. This is related to one of the trainings that were conducted in Taiwan. It was related to the smartphone design and manufacturing area in collaboration with MediaTek Taiwan. It was a very beneficial training, and that's why we have captured it here as a highlight. And in this training, around 80 engineers were trained. Many of them got gainful employment in good industries, and some of the training participants were from our internal NILET staff, and many of them are continuing with our organization, and they are actually helping us a lot in creating another pool of trained manpower in this domain. Based on this success story, I mean, another understanding was arrived with III Taiwan, and the scope of this program is planned for 5 years. Here, the recently first batch got trained in mobile phone designing, and participants were sent to Taiwan between 12th Feb to 18th Feb. So this happened very recently, where the participants got the practical hands-on training in the area of a communication system, IC chip design, and 5G RAN architecture. And the feedback that we have got is very good. We are very hopeful that other batches, when they travel, they will also get the opportunity to gain further experience in other areas which were not covered in this particular training. So our understanding is that these areas of mutual collaboration with Taiwan, at least we have a very good understanding, has benefited the participants a lot. And now we should also see how we can arrive at a understanding with other organizations and counterparts of other countries to have a similar kind of basically understanding in the emerging areas which were not covered so far with other countries and other organizations. So our proposal is that we create a working group with our counterparts in different organizations and countries, identify new areas of mutual interest in the emerging areas, and then create a framework for mutual recognition and collaboration at broader level, at maybe Asia Pacific level. And we are also doing certain things at G20 level. So that proposal is also under discussion. Maybe something will come out of it. And there is a framework proposed in that discussion also. And once we have a common understanding, then we should also plan a phase-wise implementation. I mean, we can start with one area, one particular domain, one program, develop a mutual recognition framework for that one, mutually agree onto it, and then implement it. That's how we can proceed and help in maturing this model of cooperation across different countries and different organizations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tiwari. It's very punctual time. I think you give a lot of the information, very fruitful, informative sharing, and a great achievement about your milestone. You got 8.4 million candidate, and there's so many training sites there. And I think it's very important because every country got issue is about a bridge the talent to provide industry ready profession. I think many countries they got the same problem. Somebody says kind of the job ready, but you call it the industry ready. I think it's very good. And also I think one thing I should highlight, it's you got a virtual lab, virtual training platform. I think it's also very advanced, and the skilling ecosystem to fill the gap. And a lot of the international cooperation ever since 2011, I think it's a very long-term forward thinking about that. I would like to invite Dr. Jiabin Xiao, the Secretary General, Computer Skills Foundation, CSF, from Taiwan. Dr. Xiao is a world skills competition expert of Trade 9 in information technology, and the chief expert of Trade 9 IT for the National Skills Competition in Taiwan.
Thank you. I'm JV from Taiwan. During digital transformation in Taiwan or any country, industry always say that they need a lot of talents with various digital skills. At the same time, academic side is eager to help students get through the last mile. Eventually, CSF was established in 1989. Its directors include government representatives from who formulate industrial development policies, chairmen of industrial associations, and the representatives from education department. CSF plays a very proactive role to help the academy with a lot of activities and resources. The following are the main part of what we are doing. At the beginning, we conduct survey to verify the demand of industry. Based on that, we team technical specification committees to formulate functional benchmarks and the technical capability indicators. After that, we develop teaching materials, tests, supportive tools, and digital teaching platforms to support students, support teachers. We also train teachers, recommend industrial professionals to schools, organize promotion events, or even end-to-end go to schools or training centers for on-site exhibition and illustration. Under teachers' instruction, students will practice real cases and are trained to the level of skills required by industries. Finally, a certification will be implemented to prove that the learners have the professional level required by the enterprise. Next, I would like to ask my colleague, Jason, to give you more details. Jason, please.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Jason from CSF. So I'll go into the more technical side of this presentation. So in terms of scale, we have worked with over 1,000 schools and training centers to cultivate talents with digital skills. So on the right-hand side of the map of Taiwan, you will see that we are not only in the industrial, more developed western side of Taiwan. We also have networks in the more rural, the eastern side of Taiwan to ensure that there's a balance with both the cities and the countryside in terms of digital scaling. And we have up to 2022 passed over 6 million talents that we have trained and certified within our system. And to ensure that ourselves are following the latest industry trends and that our test banks are up to date, we have invited over 1,000 experts from research and development departments or technical departments of industries to analyze the current job standards and help us create a relevant item bank of our tests. And our certificates are recognized by many Taiwanese international enterprises, and some of them even require them to for their job applicants. So some of the ones I'll highlight here are maybe ASUS, Acer, and MediaTek. Delta, they have a strong presence here in the Southeast Asia region. But you can see here we don't only have the pure tech companies, we also have logistics companies, hospitals, financial institutions, because nowadays every company is essentially a tech company. So our certificates help ensure that they are hiring from talents that have the relevant technical and digital skills. So going into our certifications, we have developed 140 skill items, which are distinguished into 4 lines. So this includes the TQC, TQC Plus, ITE, and EEC. So briefly going into each one. So TQC is the Technical Quotient Certificate. This is mainly for Microsoft Office related skills, so for the basic office workers. And then for TQC Plus, this is aimed for the programmers and visual designers and engineers. Going on to ITE, so this one is more tailored towards IT professionals or cybersecurity professionals. And going on to the last one, EEC, which we are seeing a growth recently, that is for talents in enterprise digital transformation and e-commerce related skills. So we aim to certify a broad range of technology users, from our regular e-citizens, ensuring they know how to use basic computer functions, all the way up to analysts and everything in between. So that is what we aim to certify with our 4 different product lines. And now let's take a closer look at our TQC Plus. So this line of certifications, we have reach across 6 different domains, ranging from architectural design graphics to the 3D interior design, going on to engineering and mechanical graphics, so CAD drawings and product design. And then we also have electronic circuits and design, digital logic designs, and then basic creative app programming, software development, web page design, all the way up to image processing or graphic design. So each set of these domains have these individual or specific subjects which we provide certifications for. And so we have generated and published about 140 learning materials of digital skills, which the contents are all real case oriented, ensuring that the learners are learning relevant skills to the job market. And these materials are available both in physical and digital copies, because we can't promote digital skilling without being digitized ourselves, right? So here are a couple teaching materials examples. For example, here we have a problem for students to design a electronic circuit for the transformation from 4-bit digit to analog. And they have to ensure that the CP, CR, and voltage output are in compliance with the specs given. And we also have like design parts parts or surfaces. So on the left, you can see here the students have to learn how to design a milling cutter with the given specs, or on the right-hand side, a speaker stand, for the and with the specs that we would give them. Or also product designs. So here they can learn how to design an over-the-ear headphones or electronic pencil sharpener. And also mentioned earlier, we do have a teaching material on architecture and interior design. So they can also learn how to design, for example, a dining area in a restaurant or an office space within a reception area. And we are also keeping up with the latest industry trends. So we also have AI, machine learning related teaching materials. So here the students will have to create a regression model for the prediction of housing prices using the random forest technique. So, so that said, we have built a digital learning platform that includes digital teaching materials, ones we looked at earlier, and we also provide questions and reference answers for the students to practice. So this allows the students to study and do their self-assessments remotely. They can do it anywhere they like. And the platform provides feedback and scoring results promptly, so the students can practice again, correct their errors. And it also provides stats such as how many practices the student has done, and if the student is projected to pass the certifications with the scores that they are getting currently, and also how they rank currently on the learning platform. So we provide this kind of analytics for the students to know where they stand academically. And all the teaching and materials and tests doesn't mean a lot unless we have the qualified teachers, right? So we train teachers through workshops, and we bring them to bring them to the level of skills that are currently required by enterprises, and so that they know what is demanded by the industry. And a total of over 10,000 teachers have been trained by us so far. And we have developed a teaching management platform for teachers to manage students' learning progress in terms of coding. So the Code Judger platform is something we co-developed with an ed tech startup called Kyosei AI, which enables students and teachers to practice and give tests on different coding languages. And we are constantly scouting for executives with practical experience in enterprises to serve as lecturers and speakers, and to teach in classrooms in collaboration with school teachers, so that our students and our teachers are getting the most up-to-date information from the industry side. And we love to reward students with outstanding achievements and set them up as a standard for others to follow. So we have awarded scholarships and certificates to those that have gone above and beyond in various levels of schooling. And we organize competitions and awards to stimulate learning motivation, and for students to team up and collaborate with each other. So we have developed test banks, like we said earlier, with real-life cases to evaluate if our test takers' skill level match the requirements of the industry, or if they have taken in what was in the teaching material. And all tests are digitalized, and they can be administered online, saving on paper and other materials. And we have set up a promotion team to go directly school to school to inform the students of the latest industry development trends, employment opportunities, and the business expectations. So this way the students, we hope this way we can motivate them to know why they are studying, what they are studying, so they can stay motivated in their education. So going back to our Code Judger system, we do scoring automatically. It allows the students to upload their answers, and it provides a prompt feedback on the scores, and it allows the students to upload again, check if they are on the right track, and adjust their answers. And finally, we issue certificates which are digitized and made available online. So this way, the enterprises can check the authenticity of these certificates when they are hiring for hiring purposes. So that's it from me. I think I'll hand it back over to Dr. Xiao to find for the summary here.
Many thanks for Jason. From above, you can see we do a lot of things and are doing our best to assist school and industry. We have signed MOU with 90 before to mutually recognize the skill standards and certificates. Look forward to cooperating with anyone who is interested in cultivation of talents with professional digital skills. Thank you so much for your listening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for CSF, Dr. Xiao and Jason's sharing. I think CSF in Taiwan is a very important organization in digital skilling. You got some great achievement in over 6 million of talents were well prepared with the professional skills. And especially you got a very well-structured certification system. I think it's most important is that be recognized by the industry. As you mentioned that you got a lot of the industry to recognize your certificate. I think it's very good to young talent to get a job ready, this kind qualification. And also, I think it's very good, just like 90, you got kind of the virtual platform like co-judge and some practical example of your certification and the testing. I think it's very good. Now, next one, let me call Miss Alison Wall, Chief of Staff, Digital Skills Organization, DSO Australia. Miss Wall has over 20 years of experience as a professional in the Australian vocational education and training, VET sector. She has led the state and the national initiatives to increase industry skills and address workforce shortage. I think Alison can share us more about the digital skilling in Australia. Alison, please. Yeah.
Thanks, Dennis. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to share my screen. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. Today, I'm going to talk through sort of 3 key areas. I'm going to give a little bit of background to the DSO, and then we're going to look at some data around the digital skilling challenges that we see here in Australia, and then look at 3 practical ideas about how we can do things better in the digital space. So looking forward to sharing this with you. So currently at the DSO, we are set up as a pilot and we've been set up to test the ideas to support reform in the vocational education system here in Australia. We're in the middle of a transition because we're about to become a Jobs and Skills Council. We're not all the way there yet, but we're certainly on the way. We're in the last months of our pilot and that concludes in June this year. So we started with nothing and have built an excellent database of contacts and companies in the digital space. The numbers, as you can see there, are quite impressive. And we work with these organisations in the digital space as well as training providers. And you can see some of those logos down the bottom of the screen there of the partners that we work with. So in starting the pilot, we identified 4 key goals. We started off with a hypothesis, which was that we needed to, from a digital skills perspective, start exploring a skills-based approach to learning. And so we set the foundations for this. We also recognised that there was a need to support registered training organisations. So they're the people who are delivering the training. Next, we understood that we needed to connect employers and industry organisations and link them with the learners through those training providers. So this is what we refer to as stewardship. And then lastly, we needed to undertake trials. So we needed to come up with some ideas and then deliver those trials and either prove or those trials then help us to improve some of the ideas that we've identified as part of our work. So we're nearing the end of the pilot and currently completing our trials and our final report and transitioning from where we are currently and working out what comes next for us as a Jobs and Skills Council. Look at some data and then I'll come to some ideas. So effectively the figures here are obviously from an Australian context, but I think that none of these things will come as a surprise to anybody on the webinar today. We know that there's been so much research undertaken in the digital space and there are differences, so this is at least our perspective. So in Australia, 50% of workers are now completely in the digital workforce, and that is increasing all the time. I noticed Jason in the presentation previously mentioned this fact as well. No surprise for that. Not surprisingly, when you think about it, most of the growth in the digital workforce is taking place outside of the tech sector. And this is reflected that, you know, digital capabilities and technologies are now being mainstreamed outside of what were traditionally very technical roles or companies. It's now about the people who use tech and capitalize on its functionality. This is a fundamental shift. In the third box, you'll see here that we are seeing continuing growth in the workforce that we need in Australia. We already have a shortfall of 500,000 digital workers, and that will increase as we go forward. Now, that may not seem a lot for some of the countries that are attending the webinar today, but when you consider that the total population of Australia is just over 25.5 million, this is a significant number for us. And the reality is, lastly, when you look at the numbers and you look at the performance currently across our training and education space here in Australia, we specifically need to train more people to close the gap. And at the moment, on the current performance, we're unlikely to close that gap unless we do things differently. So here's a little bit of data. Apologies for the very complex slide, but hopefully you'll understand where we're going here. We've been doing a lot of work in the data space on those digital skills and how those skills are changing. We've looked at advertisements within the Australian jobs market, so actual job scrapings, and we've tried to map the digital skills asked for in those jobs to particular professions. This has resulted in a basic classification system outlining the sorts of jobs that have the requirements to people with lots of digital skills versus those jobs that don't have a lot of digital skills in them. This work is progressing, so our terminology is still in development, but as you can see, we've got some groups here of workers falling into different categories with high digital intensity, moderate digital intensity, low intensity, and very low intensity. We've noted that the jobs with low intensity digital skills, which are still very much professional jobs, are fundamentally shifting and changing in terms of the technology that they're using. This use of technology is increasing as it helps people deliver better quality work, and of course results in better productivity for companies and an improvement in a person's earning potential. And we know that where people have those digital skills in those low intensity jobs, they're increasing their pay on average by 10 to 15%. So it's a significant consideration for where we're currently at in the skilling discussion. Overall, not surprisingly, what we are seeing is that people are moving up the scale. So people are shifting from low intensity to moderate intensity and from moderate to high. Those high intensity roles are remaining largely the same, but we're seeing a general shift upwards from the lower levels. So this is just a way of describing the demand for skills and how these skills are starting to shift and change across the economy as we move forward. What it helps us to do is understand how we're tracking against delivering impactful training and where we may need to train for particular types of skills so we can ensure that we're actually creating a workforce that is relevant and needed by employers. So in response to this, we're seeing here in Australia, but I'm sure this is true internationally as well, that employers, in response to the challenges of training their workforce, are increasingly moving towards non-accredited forms of training. In our context, that means, in an Australian context, that means moving away from nationally accredited and recognised vet training to taking up vendor training, and we've seen some of that in the examples shown here today. So things like private courses, vendor training, etc. So we have less demand for accredited forms of training, and this raises a number of questions. Why? Why doesn't it meet the needs of employers? What other training is relevant? Is the duration of training too long? Is it sustainable? Do employers at certain levels, so whether they're a small business or a large corporation, understand what their needs are compared to other employers? Do they actually know what training they need? What we're seeing is that there's a distinct difference between large employers versus small and medium-sized employers, and a significant gap between accredited and non-accredited training. And you can see that difference on the slide. As we look at the national training system, we should be looking at this and trying to understand why this gap exists and how we can take advantage of that to understand what improvements can be made. There's obviously significant challenges around delivering this type of training, given the speed of change and the performance and capabilities of the current system here in Australia. So this is our last starter slide, and it really does show how the vocational education and training plays relatively to higher ed and schools. So VET is in the yellow, higher ed's in blue, and you can see the schools in the top two, orange and bright red. So on the x-axis, we have the percentage indicators of digital intensity within jobs, and these are obviously low on the left, moving to the right, which is increasing the digital skills intensity. The y-axis, as I've said, measures those different levels of education from people who haven't completed school to those who have completed undergraduate studies. So on the left, in the first column, you can see that the lower digital intensity roles are split roughly between vocational education and higher education. But as you start to move up towards the higher intensity skills, as you move along to the right, you can see that VET is starting to fall behind, and we see a dominance of higher education. On one level, this isn't surprising. On another level, this is quite confronting. VET in Australia opens up pathways for people to access employment. And so we need to be accessing better employment for those people. We need to find better ways to enable VET to play its part in delivering digital high digitally intensive skills. And we need to think about how we can deliver more relevant training in the timeframes that employers want. Vocational training should be taking advantage of this and making the most of this opportunity. And as we consider the number of people who go through VET, every single person who undertakes training should be exposed to some sort of digital training. So regardless of whether you're a hairdresser or a plumber, you should be given opportunities to be able to compete for the most demanding roles. To do that, however, we need to think about how delivering of training can be better designed to meet the needs of employers. This is our challenge as the Digital Skills Organisation. How do we help VET to deliver the type of training that is going to be recognised, which helps share the load between delivering the people that the economy wants with the right skills? And so this is obviously the work that we'll be doing as we move forward into our new organisation, which is the Jobs and Skills Council. So this is the Jobs and Skills, a representation of the Jobs and Skills Council, if you like. As I said, we finished our pilot in June. The Australian government, this is a national establishment of the Jobs and Skills Councils, and the aim is for them to provide a strategic voice to the Australian VET sector and deliver stronger outcomes for employers and learners. We will be one of 10 of these organisations, and we'll be looking after finance, business and technology. So this new work will allow us to work towards addressing some of the issues and some of the issues that I've just outlined in the previous slides. The strengths of the council will be that they provide an end-to-end perspective and bring together all of the components, so learners, employers and training providers, into this one ecosystem, and ensuring that we have a common view of a problem and a common response. The new arrangement will allow us to put a process in place which is driven by analysis of the challenges and then what we're trying to do, and therefore the gap that exists. We'll then be able to develop a strategy to continue and improve continuously over time, and then we can work together to identify the priority needs in terms of what changes need to be put in place to help the system work better. So in this cycle, you can see we start with collaborative planning. This then allows us to identify what needs to be done, and the activity is reviewed by the government, and the government then funds that activity. This then allows us to deliver programs, and then we can evaluate how successful these programs are and how we can move forward. It's a real opportunity for us to all work together and address these skills challenges together. So what I wanted to talk about is 3 big ideas that we think we will be using going forward into the Jobs and Skills Council and into that circular process that I've just described. When we think about 3 big ideas, the first one is that we need to focus on the system. It's an interconnected system. The Australian funding is allocated from multiple levels of government that sit across the system, and those multiple level governments are federal and our various state governments. We have to find a better way to bring the system together so that we understand how to integrate employers into the system with learners and training providers. And we need to be clear about what drives this value chain. And then how can we really help that value chain come together and build relationships, which is so important. They need to be strengthened to help really drive the system and the ecosystem to the right place. It's a huge opportunity for us. If we can get clarity about this, and then we can put data in place that underpins this, and we can really see what works, what doesn't work, and this will help drive again that value chain that brings these elements together. The second big idea I'd like to talk about is the clarity of messaging. How do we help people appreciate what their potential is, and how do we make language of technology really simple for people to understand and access? We've put a lot of work into trying to articulate what career paths look like in tech. There's an absolute premise here that there is a place for tech. There is a place in tech for everybody, no matter what your age, what your gender is, where you've come from, what other skills you might have. You don't need to be afraid of the name. You can be confident that you can actually take those skills to the right level. And so we've developed this, this roadmap, or this underground map, I should say, which outlines all the technology roles, and we're calling it the underground map. Essentially, it helps to identify a range of tech roles and talks about the skills that underpin them. So you can move transferably through those different areas, and we think it's a real opportunity to try and provide a simple view of what careers in tech look like. The next, or the last idea that I'll just come to, is something that I think we're all very aware of, and that's around digital literacy. And it's incredibly important to be aware of this. There are many frameworks. We know there are many different opinions about digital literacy, and there's no one single definition. So we want to be really clear about what digital literacy means and how important it is. So we're looking for a single definition and working on that. If we want our schools to be very clear about what they should be training young people, then they need to be clear about what an endpoint looks like. So in this model, we know absolutely that everybody and every employer has a significant skill need for people who are digitally enabled to operate within the worlds that they live in. So our approach is to use an existing framework and to come up with a single definition, and then to use this as the North Star to drive us forward. With this potential flowing into the workplace, into people's lives more broadly, we think this idea is incredibly important, and it will be part of our remit going forward. We look forward to updating you on our work as we go forward. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Alison. I think you just shared very good information about how the digital skilling in Australia. I think DSO is a very important organization in Australia. The purpose to strengthen the pool of the digital talents. I guess what you mentioned that your job and the skill council, you just mentioned 3 points: the training ecosystem, accessible digital and the tech career pathway, and the digital literacy. I guess it's another topic maybe in the future we can explore with like a CSF and the NILIT, because for these 2 organizations, they already have a long history and a lot of experiences in this area. So the next, may I call Mr. Dato Palani, Chair of the ASEAN Future Workforce Council, FWC, Malaysia. Concurrently, he is also serving as the Director of Human Resources Development Corporation, which is under the Ministry of the Human Resources Malaysia. Also, he served as the Vice President of the Malaysian Employers Federation and the Council Member of the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers, FMM.
Very good afternoon to the, first of all, thank you for the invitation extended to AFWC to share our thought and opinion related to this subject. I think it's a great opportunity to engage and network with the regional practitioners. Let's move on to the first slide. Let me just briefly introduce to you what is AFWC. ASEAN Future Workforce Council was formed in 2019 as a catalyst to advance business and industry cooperation and development of future skill and TVET within the ASEAN. It's a body that's led by business and industry, and it is represented by the ASEAN-wide Business Chambers of Commerce, with a very specific focus on future skill development, and to provide a platform for collaboration, coordination, research and development with multiple stakeholders, both within the region and globally. We have got a very specific objective that we have actually established. The core ones are actually, number one is to enhance the relevance and quality of TVET and future skill regulation and policy and strategies within the region, and strengthen the leadership role of business and membership organizations with TVET future skill, and also to rebrand the TVET. It's functionally to ensure an ecosystem that advances the role of business and industry, as it is more on a demand perspective of the TVET development. We have prioritized 5 core areas that we are working on related to this. Number one is to look into the regional skill development with a specific focus on the ASEAN region. Number two, of rebranding the TVET and skill to reflect the future need of the employers' perspective as well as the business, to advocate public-private partnership, and also to strengthen the business industry role in future skill and TVET formation within the ASEAN member states and as well as ASEAN. And finally, also to work on financing and support mechanism for TVET and future skill project implementation. These are the priorities that has been clearly identified, and our scope of work very much focused in these priorities. The member of the ASEAN Future Council consists of the business and chamber representative from the 10 ASEAN member states: Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. Right, we are a joint business council under the ASEAN BAP, and we are also the founding member, and currently as part of the focal point of the newly formed ASEAN TVET Council. So we carry the agenda of the business and industry perspective in the ASEAN TVET Council, so that we could align the policy formation with also the industry perspective. Our formation, our journey is quite interesting in a sense that we operate on a functionality and a focus on very specific area. We started our work in 2018 as part of the regional policy dialogue team that was initiated by the GIZ initiative under the Project RICO TVET, and it went on into an extensive regional working group, which we have multiple cross-sectional study within the ASEAN as well as in German and Europe. And subsequently, we in the 9th regional policy dialogue that was held in Bangkok, AFWC published a future ASEAN agenda for TVET, which consists of a blueprint document with about specific 45 recommendation on skill and future skill development in the region. And then the council is officially formed in a partnership support from the ABAC as well, and with a legal entity operating from Malaysia. We have a comprehensive mechanism and also a blueprint that was designed and developed, which encompass 9 focus areas with 45 specific recommendations that is actually obtained through a holistic and a comprehensive work done by the 10 member state business chambers as well as policymakers in consistent. This recommendation has been presented, and we are now in the work in progress at various levels at various countries within ASEAN in terms of the implementation. For the purpose of today's presentation, that as per the request from the organizer, I would like to share some perspective of how that we look into the future skill, and with a very specific focus on the TVET ecosystem. One of the core areas that we need to look at is that in terms of the regional development of future skill is also looking into the TVET, because we believe that the skill area is going to be one of the core areas that could move the region from a labor intensive segment to a more skill oriented segment. And in order for us to move that, there is a very important requirement within the region where the identification of future skills should be aligned with the sustainable development goals. We focus on knowledge-based rapid technology change, sustainability, and poverty alleviation. If you look at it from the regional perspective, there is APEC has got actually a very big opportunity in enhancing the different, because there exists a solid gap that need to be fulfilled at. And you could look at regional perspective or globally, 692 million, about 50% of world's youth are actually aged between 15 and 24, and they are in the Asia Pacific. And TVET would be a viable alternative to university, and encompassing TVET with a digital inclination could be a good game changer that will be beneficial in that regional perspective. Okay, what could be the perspective of new economic and social policy paradigm with relate to the future skill, and what we need to look in terms of requirement? First, let me just, you see, we are seeing the impact of fourth industrial revolution as well as the changes in the global and economic landscape, which is creating a situation where there is a common acceptance that the fourth industrial revolution, there will be a change in terms of demand, in terms of areas that job will require. And based on the PwC data that was published in December 2020, it is stated that as for the fourth industrial revolution reshape the future of job, 38% of the additional GDP that could be gained through upskilling will be created in the business, service, and manufacturing sector. And you could see that this has got a huge potential, because it is not only about losing the job that will be diminished, but it's also about fantastic opportunity where new job will be created. If you look at the next slide, you could see another scenario where if with the proper approach in terms of the employment opportunity and also business startup, upskilling, if it's been approached in a very systematic and structured manner, it could actually contribute to the net creation of about 5.3 million new jobs by 2030. Meaning to say, as much as the technology advancement could create some job position could be redundant, but there's a fantastic opportunity for upskilling where there'll be new job market will be created. And that means to say that there is a big prospect in terms of development of the skill to match to this requirement. And I think this that actually indicates the region and economy with the biggest gain are probably will be where the skill gaps exist. And then we know that in Asia Pacific, this is one of the greatest challenge. And if this is being addressed well, it could actually significantly contribute towards the productivity through skill augmentation aligned with new technologies. With this scenario, I believe all of us, I think I would like to share with some of these scenarios that probably it's common, it's not unique to ASEAN or certain country specific, but these are the challenges in pursuing skill from the perspective of TVET or VET education. It's still seen as a second study option, and there's a bigger issue is that it is more of low skills, and there's exist skill mismatches and lack of innovation and creativity in the labor workforce, which is a big concern for the business industry, which if it's being effectively addressed, would be able to give the region a more productive and also innovative perspective of the workforce. So the way forward will be is that how do we look at this potential, the opportunity as well as the challenge that is rising out of this context. I'm actually proposing a four approach, which actually will be very useful to look at and see how that we could actually explore. One will be is to take an approach of industry and demand-based perspective. What could be the right approach would be that any policy reshaping and any initiative towards skill digitization and technology has to be seen from the perspective of the industry, from the demand. I think the countries in the region, most of the time, are always on supply oriented because of the traditional and inherited perspective. But this has to move forward, change, because at the end of the day, it is employability or from the context of employment or gig economy or new work. What matters is that the ability that for us to provide skill or future skill related perspective from the demand point of view. Number two is also the importance of having a proper standard, quality standard and compliance, and also how that we could work towards creation of new job functionality using globally accredited standards. This is important because as that we move on to new technology, there also exists a requirement for new qualification and competencies. So these has to be approached in a very structured manner. And for ASEAN, if we are able to pursue this from a regional perspective, this could actually provide a very good labor mobility, at the same time acceptance of standard vis-a-vis within the ASEAN or from regional or global perspective. And there's also a strong requirement on the need on the capacity building and future ready talent and talent pool, which need to be looked at from the within the region. And also, how do we adapt the technology intervention in terms of development, which would be a game changer, because I think as we embark post-COVID, we have realized that many organizations, be it big or even micro organizations, has embarked on technology as a platform to grow. And it is very important that for us to pursue the change point from that mechanism. And finally, the support mechanism and accessibility is a key factor that need to be looked at from in order for us to progress. And this is where I believe that organizations like us could come together and see what that we could pursue from a regional perspective, as well as from a country level approach, that we could contribute in enhancing the skill enhancement using digital platform. And that could actually contribute not only in the countries where they have got very good system, but also in the countries that is actually developing a new model and the economic is going through a different phase of development. So with this note, I wish to take this opportunity to thank the organizer for the invitation extended, and AFWC with a sole focus on a future scale agenda. Look forward to establish cooperation and relationship and MOUs on the areas that we could work together to create a synergy which could benefit the business and employment perspective within the ASEAN. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Palani. I think you just raised several topic. I think it's just our main thing about digital skilling, cross-border cooperation. In your sharing, you mentioned that TVET, you got a way forward and some challenges of the TVET. In fact, from my point of view, I think it's also some of the every country, when they mention about a digital skilling, they have to explore this topic. So it's very good. So we can keep exploring in this area for the cross-border cooperation. And must be prepared. I think in your slide, I think it's very good. Country must be prepared for the current and the future skill requirements. I think that every country is the same. Very good. Thank you for your sharing. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for the fruitful speeches and sharing by our previous speakers. Now we are entering the panel discussion to explore this webinar theme further. So aside from our 4 speakers, let's welcome the other 3 panelists also join the discussion now. So Mr. George Abraham is the chair of the CASI SME Council, Singapore. He's also the chairman of the GA Group and the senior consultant to various UN agencies in SME development and the private sector and the private capacity building. Welcome, George. And we also have Mr. Charlie Gordon, Global Policy Lead, International Chamber of Commerce, ICC from France. And Charlie, as a Global Policy Lead at the ICC in Paris, he also focused on policy issues linked to SME and to the digital economy. Welcome, Charlie. We have the Ms. Charmaine Leong, the President, Philippine Young Entrepreneur Association, PYEA. Charmaine also represents the Philippines, both as the country chair in the ASEAN Young Entrepreneur Council and as an executive committee member of the Young Entrepreneur Group of the Asia Pacific. Welcome, Xiaoming. So the first question I would like to address to Mr. George Abraham. George, so as you are chairing the SME Council in CASI and familiar with the SME development, what sort of the digital skills be needed and the difficulties encountered by SME in this regard? So can you share with some of like example or scenario or application in Singapore or other region currently?
Thank you. Very quickly, I will try to underline what Singapore has been doing. We are very small, so it's probably easier to do the various government implementation plans. So we have a body called Government Tech, and they have concentrated on 3 areas in this particular area of development, which is in products, services, and cyber and governance. So the Digital Government Blueprint was launched actually in 2015, and the idea was to harness new technologies, build digital economy and society, and capability centers to be established, and 5 of them were to be established. So the Digital Government Blueprint and the Smart Nation Agenda involves capability centers to be established, basically in application design, development, and deployment, in cybersecurity, in data science and artificial intelligence, and in sensors and internet. But from the ASEAN perspective, I think we have to recognize that while we talk about digitalization, we have to remember that there is not only a formal SME sector, there's also the informal SME sector, which also transacts businesses and is basically trying to survive on very little. So I would like to use an example from India of someone from the informal sector selling tea from a cart where he was using cash. Now, with the introduction of the telephone which can transmit payments, he used to do 3,000 cups a day, and from using this banking facility where he doesn't have to spend time in exchanging cash when people pay him, he has been able to use this telephone method payment and avoid cash transactions. I'm using a very simple example of when we talk about digitalization and so on. And as a result of that, he was able to increase his teacups from 3,000 to 8,000. An additional advantage was that the bank that was providing the service for him realized that he is actually doing good business. He's a good businessman in the sense that his money is going straight to the bank and he doesn't have to use the money to pay cash to the milk supplier or the people who supply him tea and so on. So a lot of other people were benefiting from his transactions in this way. And also time was being saved by the people who were before having to physically transport his goods. An additional advantage from a banking perspective was that the banker who was sitting and monitoring the payments, daily payments and weekly and monthly payments, realized that this is a good business that can be supported. And so instead of him having to go to a third party and borrow money at 20%, he was able to get money from the bank because the bank had an idea of how his business was doing and on a regular basis could extend money to him and collect payments. Now, this is a really ground level use of digitalization, which has affected the informal sector. And there are hundreds of examples like this. Sorry for because of the time constraint, I can't go into many more examples like this, but Singapore is one extreme of more advanced. I've given an example of one where the economies are at varying levels, and this is from the lowest level, which has benefited from the process of digitalization.
Thank you for your sharing, George. I think you just mentioned as a very good example. It's about like some example in India. I think we normally only consider about SME sector, but I just mentioned it's another area we should pay some attention. It's a kind of the informal, you call it informal SME sector. I think we should take into account also in the future to explore this topic.
Yes,
so thank you.
Incidentally, India is also a member of CASI. I've used a CASI example. I think the important thing is to understand that there has to be capacity building and future readiness and a support mechanism that will build upon what our last speaker was talking about. So instead of just looking at the larger companies in the SME sector, because don't forget SMEs range from very large SMEs to the smallest they call micro. But below the micro is also the informal sector, which is also doing good business in all the CASI countries.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yeah, so this is one area that we can look at. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share.
Thank you. Certainly, we should pay some attention in that. It's you call it informal SME sector. I think we will explore that topic maybe in the future. Okay, thank you for your sharing. So my next question, I will go to Charlie. We knew the long history and the importance of the ICC, International Chamber of Commerce, in the global commerce, as you are acting as the global policy lead at the ICC in Paris. Are there any policy issues linked to the digital skilling for SME? Or to the digital economy, digital literacy? How do you see the digital skilling in global commerce development?
So I think in many ways, digital skilling is a common thread across a number of our initiatives at ICC. Because I think we realize that in order to enable universal connectivity and thereby enable global trade, we need to make sure that all businesses, big or small, can unlock the full benefits of digital tools and technologies. And so we need to, number one, build the right business environment, the right regulatory environment, and as has been discussed today, build capacity within the private sector. And I think, interestingly, a number of studies recently have shown that when we look at digital divides, issues like the lack of awareness of benefits or the lack of relevant content, but crucially, the lack of skills tend to surpass affordability as a major barrier to connectivity. So skills is really front and center of a lot of what we do at ICC in order, as you said, to promote international trade ultimately. And so in this context, to give you an example, last year we published a white paper on what we call delivering universal meaningful connectivity. And in this paper, we really highlight the important role of government in enhancing digital skills. Government can do that through direct investment in capacity building, through the development of guidelines and standards that shape educational institutions, and also by supporting innovative models and programs that are driven by educators, NGOs, and very frequently also the private sector. So we need to bring this sort of multi-stakeholder approach in order to build skills within the private sector and help businesses seize the full opportunities of digital tools and technologies to grow and thrive. Crucially, I think these initiatives by government also have to be evidence-based, and so we do our best to bring data to the fold to help government take on initiatives that are grounded in data. They have to be transparent, and crucially, they have to be inclusive, again, to make sure this is a multi-stakeholder effort. And so to give very concrete examples, we call on governments to map out business models that incorporate digital reskilling and upskilling of workers, ultimately to help promote these business models within the business community. We call on governments to conduct in-depth assessments and develop diagnostics tools to assess the state of digitalization and identify skill gaps in the workforce. We also call on them to explore partnership opportunities with the private sector to provide digital upskilling for MSMEs, and we have a number of those examples ongoing with ICC. And then more broadly, and this has been discussed in the presentations, we call on governments to gear the educational system to ensure digital skills and capacity building feature prominently across the educational curriculum. And it's through this sort of holistic approach that we can build capacity within the private sector and help businesses leverage digital tools and technologies to trade and to grow.
Very good. Should get one of you just mentioned a white paper of the connectivity of your publishing, right? And something is very important. You mean that some initiatives of the government and some you want to mapping out the digital reskilling, upskilling. I think this one information we can explore further in the future. My next question, I will go to Mr. Tiwari from Niley, India. So India is the host country for G20 this year, and the Niley was organizing a digital skilling forum for G20 in February this year. Could you please share some thoughts further for cross-border cooperation in the mutual recognition of digital skills or certification in Asia or even G20 perhaps?
I think already a foundation has been laid down by other presentators. I mean, I see that Dato Pelani shared a lot of perspective about how skilling can enable us to generate new employment by upskilling basically. So there is a need of skilled manpower in the market, in the industry. They are not getting that level of trained manpower what they need. I mean, we are educating students in the colleges, but somehow they are possibly not fitting into the industry needs. And that's where organizations like us can play a role, basically. And we are playing a role. And when it comes to cross-border cooperation, I mean, it is of utmost significance, definitely in the context of the Asia-Pacific region and perhaps even at G20 level. And that's the reason why this is also being debated at that level. And there is some kind of task force which is formed and which is proposing some kind of a structure to see how we can collaborate in this area. So setting ICT standard setups per country is important, we understand, but there's a growing need for regional international standard in this domain, and that's where we are currently engaged in also. So through our experience of working with the different organizations, which I shared in my presentation also, that we have been working with Taipei Computer Association, Computer Skill Foundation, and III Taiwan, we have seen that there is an advantage of having this kind of association. And with my industry experience, I can also tell you, like in one of my previous association, I was handling one readiness kind of project for 5G and new technology products. So the idea was like, and our organization has a global presence in more than 120 countries it is operating, and offices are located in more than 120 countries. And India is one of the primary delivery center where we provide remote delivery support, remote operations, remote managed services, when all kind of consultancy remotely to many countries, to many telecom operators worldwide who are using the product of that particular organization where I was working. So we had a need of training manpower, upskilling manpower, because in telecom, as you see, 2G, 3G, 4G, and then now 5G and now 6G will also possibly come. So there is a vast pool of resource which is already working in that area in the organizations. They cannot actually, they need to train, upskill that manpower to basically for new technologies, because once their product is deployed, first of all, they will require those people for development of new products and new technologies. Then they will require those people or trained manpower in deployment of this product and then servicing or maintenance of that product. And that has to happen worldwide. So there is a need that in those organizations also, what we were doing, we were having important assignments to ensure readiness from people, process, and tool perspective. I mean, not only people, they have to be trained for the technology. The processes also have to be fine-tuned to handle new technology. And then the tools also have to be possibly upgraded to handle the new technology. And that cannot be done by training manpower of one country or one location. It has to be done across country. Similar set of training, similar standard of training has to be delivered, because you have people located in different countries and they are actually in better position to service the requirements in those countries. So if there is a skill gap, you have to address it at global level. So whatever data presented in USA or India and China, there is a skill gap. And first of all, possibly we need to train people who are available in those countries, but we have to also see if there are other countries who can actually address those requirements. So we have to have a mutual framework where we have a standard set of training, we recognize mutually our skills, and we help enable them in getting the gainful employment in different countries and different industries, cross-border basically. We cannot limit them. And we in NILET, we are having a lot of experience in having like forming a standardization in course contents. We have also vast experience in handling associated challenges which are there in terms of providing, having a quality infrastructure, resources, and trained faculty for how to address those challenges. We have some good experience in this area. We have experience in bridging the digital divide. We know how to basically, because there is a certain segment of population which is not getting those opportunities to access upskilling programs. So that's where organizations like us have to see that segment of population get enough opportunities to access those programs and upskill themselves to for the new industry requirements, so that they can get suitable opportunities accordingly. You mentioned about this NICE DT conference which we organized here. So it was essentially it is essentially known as a NILET International Conference on Communication, Electronics, and Digital Technology. So this is first of one of its own kind, where we discuss a lot of experiences of participants from different countries and organizations on the skilling part. What is their experience? What are their recommendations? How to plan future skilling programs? So the one thing that, as I mentioned in the beginning, mutual recognition is the foundation where we mutually recognize our skills, where we find that what are the common areas of interest and form a framework to actually make this happen. So that's what is my take on this. And there's a lot to be done in this area. We are already doing a lot of it, but we understand the requirement and assume that with participation of more countries and organizations, it can be strengthened.
I think we can take into account, maybe we can discuss further in the future, especially regarding the experiences in the cross-border cooperation with Japan, with Taiwan, with other countries. I think it's very important to explore more. My next question I would like to address to Dr. Xiao, CSF. Taiwan is quite successful in ICT industry. You know that we can see there are many programs in your organization. You just mentioned that in your presentation. CSF for strengthening digital skills and some achievement. How does the CSF cooperate with industries, governments, or academia? Can you please elaborate more?
We here at CSAF, we aim to be a bridge between the private sector and academia. So for the private sector, we authorize those enterprises to use CSF teaching materials to do their internal training. In addition, we also authorize them to use our test banks in their recruitment efforts as their interview tests. And for the school side, we have worked with, like we said earlier, over 1,000 schools and training centers to help them cultivate talents with digital skills and capabilities. And we have arranged students to visit and intern in enterprises to understand the real world requirements and expectations, and for them to experience those firsthand. And last but not least, we also collaborate with the government. So we have assisted the Ministry of Economic Affairs in conducting their digital technology ability test, a test that they call IPASS, which is the industry professional assessment system. So that includes domains such as cloud technology, cybersecurity, programming, big data, etc. So yeah, so those are the main collaboration points we have with these sectors.
It seems to me, recognition by the industry is very important. In fact, I know some of the country, if they got a kind of a certification, but that's kind of just a certificate. So it's very important, especially to the skills certification has to be recognized or accepted by the industry, because it's to young talent, it's a kind of the job opportunity. My next question I would like to address to Edison. So we knew from your presentation that DSO has developed sustainable employer-led approach to create a digitally upskilled, job-ready workforce for Australia. So how does DSO cooperate with industry or academia? Any cooperation mechanism was there with Australian government, or any difficulties has been encountered? Could you share with us more about your experience?
Thank you, Dennis. Essentially, I think like a lot of us, industry is incredibly important to the work that we do, and it's because of industry that we do our work. So those partnerships and engagement are incredibly important, and as I said, in foundation of the work that we've done. If you recall those logos at the bottom of our of that first slide, people like the Australian Computer Society, MyOb, Infosys, Microsoft, Amazon. We've had fantastic relationships with all of those organisations. And one of the key pieces in the first instance that certainly helped our relationship was our relationship with the Tech Council of Australia, who as a peak body represents a lot of those organisations and brings them together. And so having that one peak body that we partnered with was certainly a key to us then gaining better respect and recognition across the industry, given that we've only been here in existence since 2020. So that relationship was pivotal, and we started a digital employers forum because of that, in partnership with the Tech Council of Australia. And so the Digital Employers Forum has been incredibly important. More broadly, obviously, as some of the speakers have spoken about today, MOUs with key industry partners have been really pivotal and important. And from those, we've obviously developed working groups, tiger teams, those sorts of things, where we can really work very closely with subject matter experts to develop initiatives and ideas, and obviously test what we're doing. I think the last part of those key industry pieces are all the trials that we've run, and there have been numerous trials. I'm just getting up the figures now, sorry, I should have them to hand, but let's think. 32 training providers, 3,900 employees and learners, and numerous pilots, heading into the 30s and 40s around the trials that we've done, and each one of those have been linked with an industry partner. So bringing those employers into an action mindset and actually trialing something has been a great way to give back. Quite often industry feels that we're just asking things from them, and if we can turn around with a spirit of reciprocity and actually give back to industry, then that's been incredibly important. In terms of government, we're obviously funded by government, and so that's been great, and they have been our we've been reporting to government, but we've actually developed an incredibly trusted relationship with our colleagues at the department. And so what that's meant is that we have been able to springboard ideas, we've been able to be really innovative, we've been able to bring them on the journey, and they've grown and trusted us to actually take on a lot of initiatives, and their support has been obviously invaluable, but that partnership aspect of that contract has been super important. There's obviously a range of other departments and agencies which have been pivotal as well, including the Australian Skills Quality Agency, the National Careers Institute, Jobs and Skills Australia. So we have great relationships with all of them. Also, you know, that's at the federal level, but also at a state-by-state level, we've been incredibly active to make sure that all of those states across Australia have been part of our work. Everybody operates a little bit differently, so it's been important to be respectful and bring those people along and those areas along on the journey. Of course, there's always challenges. I think the biggest challenge has been having an agreed taxonomy. So everybody says things a little bit differently. Everybody uses word changeably. Industry says something, the vet sector says something else. Schools, training providers, students, careers people all use different language. And so actually coming to an agreed taxonomy has been incredibly important because same thing. And so it makes it incredibly valuable. The last thing I think I just wanted to add was probably that the relationship our CEO, Patrick Kidd, has obviously developed has been important with all of the people and entities that I've spoken about. But his approach has been key, I think, in terms of always having an action attached to any relationship that we have. So it's not just talking in circles or having good ideas, that it's really driving initiatives, being prepared to trial things, getting people accountable, that's including ourselves accountable, not just everybody else. So that action-orientated mindset has certainly driven a lot of pieces that we've done, you know, and being really transparent, you know, calling failure early, keep on going, move on, try something new, reinvent, and those things have been key to our relationships. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think from your sharing, I can see it's a lot of the job we have to do with that, right? For cooperate with the industry and the government as well, for getting some trust authorized by the government. So my another question I would like to address to Mr. Palani, as you are chair of ASEAN Future of Work Council and an expert in the regional field of education and digital. I can see from your presentation. So what future skill in digital for fulfill your work in ASEAN? Can you share some scenario example?
The ecosystem in the regional perspective. You see, one of the core thing, like I think as we have seen consistently from all of us, is that key point is skill has to seen from the perspective of demand rather than supply. And I believe many countries, I think it's not limited to this region, but in multiple regions, because of a very strong government advocated, you know, the skill advocacies driven through the government mechanism, government institution, it originates from the supply perspective. But the global economy landscape changing is in a tremendous speed. What that is relevant today is becoming no more relevant in terms of application. But we can't be teaching the same fundamentals because they may not be able to be substantially able to apply the know-how, or it could be relevant to what that is required. So in this context, what is very essential is that the ability of the demand and supply to be able to meet at a point where it could create a win-win relationship. And that could be one of the way forward in us advocating a better skill advocacy. And this will be aligned with our, the UN SDG development, because elevation of poor through quality education and skill training could be one of a great mechanism in achieving this. And I think we have also learned as we move that digitalization of skill would be the best way for us, because not every country could afford to have a highly automated system that is widespread. But through the availability of digital platform, this know-how could be cascaded down to a very micro level. And that could be one of the big game changer that could benefit the region. So in this context, and we also have learned that the traditional thinking of advocacy or learning of skill through physical presence has been completely changed. And I think the pandemic on another note has also educate people to accept digital is the way forward and is the best way for you to create a blended mechanism which has got the element of physical as well as the digital element to be done via hybrid mode could be one of the way that you could create a better skill advocacy and allow a wider range of people to have access for the skill. All right, and this also could fulfill many areas agenda of inclusivity. We could also have more gender participation because one of the yesterday I participated in ASEAN roundtable discussion. It also shared that regionally the number of students exploring STEM education is much more lesser. I mean the female the participant exploring STEM education is lesser in the region comparatively. So which means to say advocacy, inclusivity could be better attained when we approach the skill from the digital perspective. And I think this could be one of the areas that we could look at in making the availability of and expanding the skill opportunity to all. Because like what I said earlier, it is not about how much the Industrial Revolution 4.0 has brought in terms of changing the job or creating new opportunity. It is about how do we get the people to be ready to capitalize and maximize through the approach of upskilling and reskilling. So this could be the way forward to look at where we could tap the benefit of the technology change and bring it over and cascade it down to a wider group of people to create a kind of a mutual growth and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your sharing.
Mr. Dennis, I wish to just take this opportunity, please, for the members of the panel as well as the audience, if there is a possibility of, we are strongly looking into collaboration because I believe as we embark, networking and co-sharing of the regional, from a regional and global perspective will be the way forward because there's no purpose of reinventing the wheel, but it is probably how we dynamically link the progress in data. So FWC actually provide a good platform that actually for the organization to embark from the ASEAN perspective, and we welcome the collaboration with the whoever that is keen to pursue this agenda.
I think I will contact with you later after this webinar. Okay, so maybe we can share something for all our participants, especially in Taiwan, India, Australia, Malaysia. Maybe we can work together for something cross-border to realize something. So my next question I would like to address to Ms. Charmaine Leong. Okay, as far as I know, you previously headed on gaps in digitalization in business with PYEA, which is also a salient point in the broader issue of the digital skilling. Could you please share with us more of your experiences and the insight?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Yes, so in 2021, PYEA was tapped by the International Labour Organization to conduct a research on and mapping of the digital landscape of the Philippines. So this is a very interesting research because this was just the onset of the pandemic, and a lot of people are struggling to digitize their companies, or at least aspiring to. So in order for us to conduct the research, we tried our best to cast a wide net, and we would like to try to understand the different entrepreneurs from different industries, from manufacturing, services, and retail, since these are the prominent industries here, as well as agriculture, since it is an industry of special interest. And then through the areas, we found representatives from different areas in the Philippines, from the north, from the middle, and the south. And then we also tried to interview people from both urban and rural sector, and also the different level of digital savviness. So we classified them based on if they are digital adapters, do they consider themselves basic adapters or non-users. So what we found is that even those that consider themselves as non-users are actually quite users of basic tools such as social media, and a lot of them use this in their sales and as their web presence. And then most of them also are aware of the digital tools. They are aware that they should adopt it, but have some hindrances And some of these hindrances include access to consistent internet connectivity. Some of them are limited by the cost. That's why we found that freemium tools are very attractive, especially to companies that are starting to adopt, because they can try it out for a cheaper cost or for less users. And if they like it, then they pay as they go. And then we also noticed that a lot of our interviewees also prefer those platforms that have very good customer service support, because when they don't understand how to onboard, they are able to hop on a call or visit maybe a support center in the mall, and that they can talk to someone who can walk them through the process. And of course, those that are very have a very user-friendly interface and have a good training video, or they have their own online platform like the e-commerce site. They have very nice videos, very engaging visuals that help people on board. Those are the ones that we've seen with more adapters. And of course, with those with wide outreach. So when it comes to the challenge of onboarding those companies, we've noticed that it's either through the pipeline, either their suppliers adopt it or their customers adopt it. So if one or the other adopts it, then the enterprise themselves would decide to adopt it. And of course, lastly is the initiative of the business owner or the decision maker to entice his employees to adopt it, because it's not only the owners themselves who have to use this tech, but also the staff and the other stakeholders. So those are some of our very interesting findings.
Thank you, Sherman, for your sharing. I think it's a very good experience for your headed on the gap of in digitalization for business, and also I can see that some young talent a lot of energy to do that. I can see from you, you know. I think I think it seems we are running out of the time. I think. On behalf of the webinar organizer, Cassie, thanks to all the speakers, panelists, and the online audiences joining us today, and the support from the partner organizations, FCCI, 90, CSF, DSO, FWC. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.